Okay.
All right. So, welcome everyone. This is the Growing Liberty in the Garden State. Today we have a very special guest. My name is Bruno Pereira, and I'm going to be your host. Today I'm going to have a conversation with Isabella Patriota. She's a member of the leadership team of Lola Brazil and is the director of development. She has a PhD in law and political economy from University of São Paulo. She's a Frederick Bastiat Fellow with the Mercator Center at George Mason University. While working as a researcher, she began to question her support of heavy government regulations and discovered the idea of classical liberalism. So she was also a policy director in the Liberty Minded Brazilian nonprofit before joining the Lola team. So welcome, Isabella.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
It is great to have you and have you people who have the same ideas and same philosophies as us, right? Liberalism and seeing as many governments tend to go towards authoritarianism is good to meet other people who share our own ideologies. So we had a few questions that I'd like to ask you. So for you, what is Lola, and how does that differ from other political advocacy groups?
Well, Lola is the latest of Liberty Alliance, as you said earlier, and we differ ourselves from the other Liberty groups, and then I will differ ourselves from the other Liberty groups because we target our audience very specifically, and most of the time people think it's because we hate men, but it's not necessarily. I would not say that a couple of our members don't like them, but it is because we are trying to target half of the population to join the liberty movement. So there is a research that was conducted recent, and then it was conducted in South Korea, but I believe it applies to the rest of the countries. That is, women are becoming much more progressive, whereas men are becoming more conservative,
Hmm.
and we're trying to address that. Why are women becoming so progressive? And it's not a problem to be progressive necessarily, because there are many fields and many issues that we would match and overlap with the liberty movement. But me, most of the time, being progressive means that you believe that the government's gonna fix your problems, right? That the government's gonna be the one leading all the solutions in your private life or in your professional career. So we're here to address that. And Lola also didn't really want to change the message, right? We kept the message the way it is. We do believe in liberty. However, we wanted to change the messenger to women specifically. So we are building a network of women to women. So that's how I believe we differ from the other liberty minded and liberty oriented groups.
Awesome. And what are some of those key messages that you want to project to other women, right? That might attract them. Like you said, they're more progressive, but what ideas do you think are there that can bring them more towards our ideas of liberty and of less government?
Well, and also it's important to say that we're not. It's nice that I'm talking to the Libertarian Party here, because I don't really need to explain why we're not conservatives, right?
Yeah.
We are a libertarian group, so I don't really need to go there, because I'm pretty sure not only you, Bruno, but all your audience understands that. But why and what are the issues that we care more about? It doesn't come top down from Lola. So we have our stances in pretty much all issues that you can think about, but Lola is pretty much free markets and individual liberty, and we are in over 50 countries. I am from Brazil originally, and I joined Lola in Brazil before I moved to the US. And why do I say that? Because we don't want, as an American organization, an American based organization, to be telling people what they should care about in Africa, in Asia, in Latin America, or even in Europe. So for us, we have our core values. There is free markets and individual liberty, and pretty much non-interventionism. But our members, they're gonna have the topics and the issues that they care more about. and it's going to be very different from the problems that we face here in America, right? So, for instance, a couple of years ago, our members in Africa, I will not remember the name of the country right now. I don't remember what was the country
Mhm.
specifically. They were protesting against the female mutilation that in many cultures there, it is still a reality, right? And although it is not legal anymore. In many of these countries, the female mutilation is not legal anymore. It is already a crime. However, parents still do it because they really believe this is the best you can do to your kids. And if your mother did that to you and her mother did that to her, this is what you really need to do to protect your kids or to keep them welcome in the environment. So many communities still apply that. And our girls, our members, were protesting it. So of course, we don't want to go to the other African countries and say, "Hey, how is it in your country? Do you is this an issue?" No, we leave it very open to them to decide what are going to be the issues that they're going to be advocating more. So it applies in other, like in Poland. Lana and I were recently in Poland, and our Polish girls, a topic that they really care a lot about is marijuana legalization there, which is different because in the US, in most of the US, you can already purchase at least for recreational or medicine. So it is not that engaging topic, right? And usually because it is nice to go against the government. If something is already legalized or if it's already free in the meaning that you can already do it. People don't really like to talk about it anymore. So that's why in countries like the US, Canada, or in places that you believe that women are in the same level as men, it is harder for us to engage with our community.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. You must have said a lot of important things, and I think that one of the key topics here is liberty, right? Because as you said, we're not here to impose our morals or values onto others, even um, within the international politics. So for you and for Lola, what does that mean? What does liberty mean to you or to Lola as a group?
As a group, it is about non-coercion. So whatever the topic is, it's about recognizing that some people they're gonna think, and I usually bring the drug aspect because for I don't use any drugs. I really think it's a bad idea. And I know in the libertarian circles this is not nice to say it like that, right? But it is about knowing that I can disagree with the practice and that I can really think it's bad. I can really tell my kids not to use, and I can really choose people to be around me that don't use it. But I don't want the government to be involved. I don't want the government to put anybody in jail. I don't want the government to tell this person purchasing it should go to a clinic facility or this kind of thing. So this is what liberty is to Lola. However, and why we do exist as an organization. It is not only to be repeating what the other organizations are doing, right? What
Hmm.
what we're doing, what I'm telling you here, this is not news for most of the organizations. What we are trying to change is the ratio of women and men in this movement. And I will tell you how we were born. Lola was born in 2009 after Nina Whitfield founded it with a couple of other women during Freedom Fest, which is one of the largest conferences liberty-minded here in the US. I was right there with Lana recently this year. It was in California, in Palm Springs. Nina worked for Ron Paul. She was leading his campaign. And what she noticed in 2008 when she was leading his campaign was that women wouldn't really vote for him. And it was harder to convince a woman to vote for him than it was to convince a man. And then and then immediately, and then she also worked for Rand Paul later in the Senate. And then after the campaign in 2009, she went to this conference, Freedom Fest. That year, it was in Las Vegas. And she noticed that there wasn't that many women there, and she thought that was the cause why women were not voting, quote unquote, liberty oriented. And then with the other 10 women that were there, like amongst like hundreds of people there, she founded Lola. So again, we care about the message, we care about the values, but our focus here is about who we're bringing in. So we that's what we're really trying to change. How many women are in the liberty movement?
Interesting. Well, it does seem that, at least from a perspective point of view, that the liberty movement has been depicted as a boys' club, right? And you kind of mentioned to that. Um, just very shortly, do you have at least a conclusion as to why there is, and what specifically are you guys doing in order to bring more women to the liberty movement? Are you guys doing a lot of outreach? Are you guys doing fundraisers, door knocking? What kind of efforts are you guys having in order to bring more women to the movement?
Well, in Lola specifically, we're working three different programs. We have the chapters, and that's why we are in over 50 countries in which we create community. Our goal with the chapters are related to the community building in each place. And then, of course, without the top down aspect, because we let them choose. For instance, in the US currently, and Lana is leading it very well, is about women learning how to shoot, or creating the environment for women to shoot, to go to shoot ranges and improve their skills. But so this is one of our programs, and then we have two other programs. The other one is our speakers bureau, in which we teach our women with libertarian ideas in many different fields to be speakers. It can be in the media, it can be in conferences. I'm going to use Freedom Fest again because we were recently there, so it's fresh in my mind. But they usually reach out to us to tell us, hey, we don't have a woman in this panel. This panel is about foreign policy. This panel is about immigration. This panel is, it doesn't matter the topic. They want a woman in the topic. So again, it's just a woman giving her views in this specific topic. And we have our leadership training, in which Lana and I, that's why Lana and I, we were in Poland together as well. We've been traveling a lot together. So we were there. And the point of the leadership trainings is to train our top chapter leaders in different skills, in different leadership skills. Public speaking, writing skills, and community building, like how to be a good leader in your community, and how to be a good ambassador as well, how to be a good ambassador of liberty in the liberty movement. So I get that question often, why I believe it is a boys club, the libertarian movement, why it's a boys club. And in my opinion, I know that there aren't that many research to say, oh, this is why women are more progressive. In my opinion, it is because women tend not to be that political. This is just I'm yet to find like a good research to say why, and why women really get less involved with politics. But we are here to change that. It doesn't matter what is the reasoning, but we're here trying to change that ratio. But is in politics, generally speaking, right? And so there aren't that many men either in the libertarian movement. Men are also more conservative or progressive. Libertarians are still very small, very small group. And but there is a research that we often use, that is that women in the libertarian movement as libertarians are, if you compare with the other spectrums like progressive or conservative, in the libertarian movement is where they feel more alone, because there aren't that many women. And another thing that I always say is that the propaganda, if we like to use that word, from if both conservatives and progressives are way better conservatives, they're gonna say, "Oh, if you're a housewife, your family is gonna give you everything. You are gonna receive everything. You should be conservative. You should be um, a stay-at-home mom, a stay-at-home wife, and then you're gonna have everything provided." And the left says the opposite, but similar. They say uh, the government's gonna do everything for you. The government's gonna give you this. The government's gonna give you paid parent living. The government's gonna give you free things. And whereas it's very tough to explain that actually you are gonna be the one to give it yourself if we follow our philosophy. So
Yeah, I agree with that. Thank you for that. We do have a question from Vic Kaplan. Vic is actually running for governor in New Jersey under the Libertarian. Vic is a good friend and a great libertarian. His question is, what are some of the arguments that are made against the philosophy that you have heard to have come from women, and how do you address them?
yeah, against the philosophy, yes. Usually when it is against the philosophy is that only regulation can fix things like the wage gap, the gender wage gap, or that the government should be the one regulating paid parent leaving. Otherwise, women are not going to be able to have kids and go back to the job market. And usually are these ones. And then how do you go against them is using data because and one thing that I usually use and because from women as well, they often use arguments related to free healthcare as well, right? Because we know only women get pregnant, and if you go from this standard, usually women get very concerned about that period of their lives because yes, this is the period of their life they are most vulnerable, and they need some support. Where is this support gonna come from? It is very rare that you're going to be doing it by yourself entirely, right? Even um if you do a oh my gosh, what is the term for that? But if you do like a solo pregnancy, you do need some kind of support. But I come from a country in which the government is giving everything, is regulating heavily, that paid parent leave in 6 months paid by the employer. Also, we do have a socialized healthcare system, and we do have all of these regulations that supposedly is protecting women. However, you are never going to see a woman from the USA going to Brazil to enjoy all of these benefits, right? You're going to see many women coming from the US, from Brazil to the US to enjoy a very different job market in which she's not going to experience none of this. So usually you use the data, and when these women are from America and they say, "Oh, see how it's in Europe, see how this is in the northern countries," you're never gonna see any of them going there, moving there to experience this. Never. It is very rare that you're gonna see a woman moving and adventuring to get a job in, I don't know, in Norway.
Yeah, great points. You said something before, and that kind of got me thinking, which was, if you're conservative, you have this viewpoint that you're going to be a mom, you're going to stay home, you're going to clean, you're going to cook, and the husband's going to provide for you, right? And then in the left, we replace the husband with the government, right? But it's still the same scenario, which is you're giving control to another entity as a woman, right? So it's more of letting someone else make the decisions for women rather than giving women the power to choose, right? And to me, that's kind of what feminism was at the beginning, right? We want our vote, we want our right, we want to work, we want to make our decisions. But now it seems like we're in a time where it's like it's okay if the government makes decisions for us, right? It's okay if the government tells us if we need it, or from the conservative now, which is what they call the tread wives, right? which is it's okay if the husband tells me what to do and I just stay home, take care of the kids, cook, clean, and I make no decisions, right? So with that in mind, would you say that this is a form of feminism where we're empowering women? And if so, would you get a lot of pushback from the feminism of 2025?
Yes, that's a great question because due to the history aspect of the name feminism, we don't use that name often. We don't say that Lola is a feminist organization, for instance, because of that, because of the interpretation, and also because feminism had many different waves. So if we get the very first one, yes, the very first one was a movement against the government. It was a movement that inherently was against the government. It was to get all of the impediments for women to vote. And all of those barriers were coming legally. So, legally speaking, the government was the one telling women cannot vote. So it was a movement against them. And then, of course, and then we had the second wave that was about and then nowadays I don't even know because they change a lot about it. Like the theory, people that study it say, oh, we have 10 wages and then waves, and then now I don't even know how many we have, but we do live in an era that they are battling how women will be based on, are they going to be at home or are they going to be working out of home, right? And that's why we don't use that name. However, we do have many women that consider themselves feminists and they go back them to the original. So they are the originalists.
Mm-hmm.
And I myself, I consider myself a feminist too, because it is not about asking the government to do anything. It is about being free to make your choices, whether or not they're going to be good for you. And this is the thing that we need to always have in mind. Being free to do whatever you want means that you're going to be free to make bad decisions about your own life. And you just really need to deal with it. And this is just part of being an adult, right? A full adult. And this is funny because being pro markets, being inherently a pro market organization, really brings more conservatives to Lola. Like if we're separating, than progressives, and that's funny because in one way, yes, they do have the markets operating freely, but in the individual liberty aspect, no, they want lots of regulation. And this is a battle that we're always going to be here, but we're not changing anything based on our members. So if we have many members that hate drug legalization or any other things that you can think of that falls under the individual liberty umbrella, we do not change, because at the end of the day we're trying to change people's minds. And if we only accept people that already think like us, we're not changing anybody. We're just accommodating the people that already believe in what we believe.
Awesome. Within that message that you're trying to propagate and you're trying to educate so many people, which states or regions welcome your message the most? Is there like any particular ones where you have a lot of resistance and then some where they welcome with open arms? How does that dynamic work?
That's also a very good question because the fact that we are an American organization will welcome us, internationally speaking, if they are aligned with the US or not. So Latin America, in Latin America, we're very popular. So this is one of our most engaging, all of our engaging chapters are there, including Brazil, because we separate Brazil just because of the language. So for Lola, Brazil is its own region. So because it's fancy to be part of Lola, because Lola offers different opportunities abroad, and then you get to speak in another language, and so it is very and then they see the US as the first world and a model of what they want to be one day, what they want their countries to become. So I will say that this is the region that Lola is more impactful and more welcome as well. And then, in the contrary, I will say that Western Europe is where we have more difficulties because they have a culture in which they believe that the government is going to be the one providing everything. And they really believe that they are doing better. Most of them that they believe that they are doing better because of all the welfare that they have. They really believe in the welfare. So, for instance, I was also in France recently during this same Euro trip. And a colleague of ours that is from the USA but lives in Paris now because she's married to a Parisian, and they live there, they're based there. And then I said, please connect us because we would love to visit different organizations there. And then she said, don't think that you're going to DC and I'm gonna tell you different organizations that you can visit, and then you're gonna talk to people, because here the atmosphere is completely different. It's very rare that you're gonna find people that agree with us in everything. And sometimes they will agree with the deregulation and everything, but they're gonna think that we're nuts because of the guns aspect. So, and then they're gonna be like, and then they're gonna think like, oh my gosh, in the US they're still debating abortion, especially there in France. They're still debating abortion, and they have guns. That doesn't make any sense. So I will say that in Europe, not because they are against the philosophy itself, because technically most of what we believe about classical liberalism and all that comes from Europe, but because they are maybe in this stage of their history that they really believe that the government is going to be the one. There is even a meme that I saw recently. I would try to replicate it in a good way here because it was so funny that the US creates, Europe regulates, and then China replicates. It was like something along these lines.
Yeah,
And it was so funny because this is true, you
very
know?
true. Very true. And it's interesting because if we, especially France, if we think about the French Revolution, right? They're really at the forefront of saying no monarchs, right? We need democracy, we need a voice, we need to stand for ourselves. And I mean, I'm from Europe, and since I'm a little boy, I remember France burning every 6 months because they don't like something, right? So if you really think of the liberty movement, the French are really the forefront of standing up and saying no, right? Because they're constantly revolting, they're constantly having riots and having their voice heard via that, that civic engagement. And for them to be so, and we're okay with the government, right? It's very interesting because if we really look at it, it seems they're anti-corporation, but they're in favor of the government. So they're okay with being told what to do, just not by corporations, right? So it's
Yeah.
interesting that the dynamic in France.
Yeah, it's similar to what we were talking earlier. Apparently, people are um, choosing who to control them. Like
Mm,
women, it's either gonna be the husband or the government. And then like it looks like we're always looking for someone else
hmm
to take control of our own lives when we don't really need it. But we need to be aware that it's like, it's like finding someone else to blame as well. Because when you're in control, you only have yourself to blame,
correct.
right? It is whether or not you're going to be successful, whether or not you're going to be healthy, whether or not you're going to have a great family, a great partner with you. It is all under yourself. But people cannot really deal with it, and then they want, like, if my life is not successful, this is the government's problem, or it's a corporation problem, or it's my husband problem, or whatever, or it's God's problem, or whatever.
Mm. So you think some of it might be self-reflection and the lack of saying maybe I'm responsible for some of these issues that I caused myself?
Yes, I like to say it's just because I don't want to say that for women specifically. I want to say that for the left.
Yeah, but individually, right? I mean, we all make mistakes, right? Whether we're men, women, left, right, center, right?
Yeah,
Um, but
and it's never gonna stop. It's gonna be forever.
yeah, so to kind of say, oh, it's the government's fault. Well, might be right. The government might be at fault for many of the regulations, many of the things that they have created, right? The way that they regulate labor, healthcare, IP laws, they're destroying pharma, destroying farms, right? But in the end, I think that we should also have some responsibility in the way that we vote. Right? I always find interesting that Congress has an approval rate, I think, of 16% now, but Congress people get elected, re-elected 100% of the time. So you're saying that everyone else in Congress is bad except the person that I vote for, right? So that's kind of like the lack of responsibility that I think that exists there, because if Congress has 16% approval or whatever it is, but everyone gets reelected 100% of the time, it seems that the voters not taking responsibility for that, right?
Yeah, I didn't know about that data, and I've just learned that. I didn't know that here is only 16% of approval.
Yeah, don't quote me, but somewhere around that,
Oh,
in
okay.
very very low double digits,
Mm-hmm.
which is interesting. Now, I had a question about kind of your background. So you're from Brazil. If I remember correctly, Brazil was under military control until the 90s, right? The 1990s, right? So
It
that was
wasn't.
the
It was the 80s. It
80s.
80s. Mm-hmm.
So that was a dictatorship, right? And
Yes.
then you guys became a republic, if I'm correct.
Yes. Yes.
Awesome. And then you guys be having elections since the 80s. Um, Now, a lot of people might not know there's something that's called O Custo Brasil, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes.
Uh, so for those that don't know, is an extra cost that is included within business in order to do business in Brazil, right? So that might be payoffs to officials, payoffs to talk to certain people, right? And that kind of adds to the bureaucracy of the system in itself, correct? Is that some of the reasons why you became a libertarian? Because you, as with your background, with your education, you started to get disillusioned with the way that you saw that the government was running.
I will tell you because actually I am from one of the first. I am from New England of Brazil.
Okay.
So the name of the city is Natal. That
Uh huh.
means Christmas in Portuguese, as you know, Bruno. But I'm
Yeah.
translating to the rest of them.
Yeah.
Uh, and it's one of the first cities in Brazil. So and as New England here in the U.S., it's like um, nobody really leaves and nobody really moves from to there, right?
Hmm.
And so I grew up there. In my state was it's not anymore was the biggest producer of onshore oil in Brazil.
Mm.
And when I went to college, the state-owned company paid for scholarships for researchers in college to study the oil field and to become professionals in the area. So they were trying to um, have people to work in the industry from Brazil. And this was a government program. They were trying to have qualified workers to work in this field in Brazil because they thought that bringing people from abroad would have people as spies and like all this conspiracy.
Hmm.
And so I got this scholarship and I was just an intern researcher for like in the very basic level for this program. And then in my school, when I joined college, I was not really political at all. My parents were never political. It's just in like my state is not. It's one of the poorest state in Brazil, and so I thought. And because that scholarship was the high paid one in college, I was applying only because of the money aspect. I only wanted to make more money in my within the options that I had. And only one professor in school was against the regulation that we had
Mm.
because the president back then, that now is the president again, Lula,
Lula. Yeah.
he had changed the regulation that we used to have before that was designed by the previous president that was much more classical, liberal oriented, of course, in the Latin America perspective, right?
Mhm.
Not at all close to what we have here. So the guy kind of opened the market, and then Lula closed the market. And then only one professor in the entire college was criticizing it and telling that it was a bad idea, that Brazil was gonna feel the
Privatize. Yeah.
consequences soon. And when I started with this program, this research program, was 2013, and everything was doing good in Brazil until 2014, and the program took 2 years. So I was supposed to write my thesis in 2015, and then everything changed in 2014. So lots of corruption scandals involving Petrobras, that is the state-owned company, and lots of crises. So that led to the impeachment of our president in Brazil. And then I went to this professor and I asked him, why were you telling that before? Why were you telling something that really happened? And then he said, you need to read this and this and this book.
Mm.
It's not relevant because the economists that he was recommending me, they're all from Brazil, and then they were writing about the industry there. So it's funny because they opened my mind, and because of them, my professor then recommended me other people like Amartya Sen. I always say that he was the first one that it really opened my mind, which is an Indian guy, also economist. For a real libertarian in America, they think that this guy is a leftist, but it's funny
Mm.
because he opened my mind in many different ways. And then that's why sometimes I don't say his name, because people are going to be like, oh, but he's not Mrs. He's not like Hayek. He's not like, yes, it's different. That's why you need to have an open mind to understand that classic, like, free market's going to look different in many different places. And then this guy, he really opened my mind. And the name of the book is Development as Freedom. And he talked, but that's the point. The entire point is that how much he was criticizing monopolies, high regulations, and blah blah blah, and how that impacted poverty in different areas. And he was saying that, like, that led women to be more at home because the market was not offering that many jobs. So ultimately, men are going to be the ones getting the jobs because women are going to be more at home, blah, 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 that kind of thing. So, and then after that, after I read that book, and then it was just this spark, right? And then my professor was the one to tell me, now you should leave Natal, go to Brasilia. And then so that's what I did. I left that school that he said, this is not for you, because, and that's funny because he's still there. He is there
Mm.
because he likes the city, but he likes to be, you know how some libertarians, they like to be the only ones saying otherwise. They
Yeah.
don't like to be the common sense. That's him. And then I moved to Brasilia, and then it was when I found about the Cato Institute, and it was also when I joined Lola, because after that I was looking for a group of women because I wanted to have female friends. I
Yeah.
was not looking, so I was looking for a group of friends that I could also be myself in, like, be and have my opinions without hiding it. So it was when I joined Lola. I was in Brasilia in 2018, and I applied for different opportunities with Cato, and so I moved to the US in 2019 because I applied for a job, and then I got the job, and then I moved, which is something very rare.
Yeah.
Like, most of the time people move and then they find a job, but like, it was, I don't like to say I was lucky because I studied a lot for that, but it was somehow lucky as well because I didn't know anybody when I moved here. I barely spoke English. I'm still learning. I'm lucky that you're Portuguese. You can understand whenever I don't know a word, you can translate to me
Yeah.
easily.
Absolutely. Awesome. Thank you for that. And I think that Brazil kind of illustrates some of what is occurring today. You spoke about Lula, all the change in regulation, right? Nationalizing industries, and I feel that everything was behind that Brazil first, right? We can't have foreigners studying our universities. We can't have foreigners learn our trade and our industry, right? All in the name of nationalism, right? And now in America, we kind of seem that there's a person similar that's talking the same thing, right? We can't have Chinese students because they might be stealing our secrets, right? We can't have foreigners because they're going to steal our jobs and our industries, right? So it's interesting how often history repeats itself, and you have sometimes the echo of the past saying, "Hey, we've seen this before." Right, and Brazil is one of them. Argentina is one of them, right? With the Perones, Chile that went through Pinochet and everything that they went through, right? Everything has been nationalism, protectionism, and it seems that in America we're kind of embracing that protectionism, that nationalism, right? So I think that people like you are very important because you could echo the voices of the past because you lived through it, and you could say, "Hey, I seen this firsthand." Right? Maybe this is not a good idea. And to a lot of my friends from Venezuela, they could echo from the other side, right? Which is the side of the socialism. Say, hey, we escaped that because it didn't work. So maybe there's a happy medium where we don't go to the protectionism and we don't go to the socialism either.
This is perfect what you're saying because you're using the right words for it. And yet, look, the guy that you mentioned, that I'm not going to mention because I'm not American yet, so I don't want to be
Well,
kicked out.
yeah, we won't say it.
No, but that's funny because the guy that you mentioned is technically a right wing, and then the guy from Brazil is left leaning, and he's technically a communist, but because he's from the photo of São Paulo and all that. But yes, it was a measure of nationalism, to say that we want our labor force from Brazil, national Brazilians. That's insane. Why does it matter who is going to be working in the oil industry in Brazil? Why does it matter where they are born? And the same about, you mentioned also Pinochet. Technically, Pinochet was also right wing, whereas the Perons that you mentioned were left leaning. So it doesn't really matter. It is whatever they're going to be saying from the left or from the right. If they want control over our lives, that's what really matters. And that's why I love libertarianism so much, because it is about us having the control over our lives and having ourselves accountables for our mistakes as well. And that's
Absolutely.
okay to admit that, like, if we fail, that was on us.
Absolutely, yeah. It's most often dogmatic versus pragmatic, right? Which is, I'm going to do everything that my dear leader says, whether it's North Korea.
I think I lost you.
In very important voice, or whether it. Oh, sorry, I thought. Okay.
I think now you're back.
Yeah, now we're back.
Okay,
Sorry
yeah.
about that. So, like I was saying, right? It's about dogmatic versus pragmatic, right? Some people will be on the dogmatic. It's dear leader. I mean, look at Lula, right? Lula, who was in jail, if I remember correctly, for a number of years, right? Because of corruption and embezzlement and everything else that he did. But then the government changed the law to allow him to win again, right? So that's dogmatism, right?
Yeah.
And much of it we also see in the U.S., which is, certain dear leader, it doesn't matter what he says, we need to follow him 100%.
Yes.
Right?
And not only that, just because we are comparing, but that's funny because very recently in 2019, we from 2019 to 2022, yes. Our former president Bolsonaro, he was known as the Trump of the tropics.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter who is in charge of Brazil, they are implementing higher government solutions to our country.
Fantastic. So from a Lola perspective, how do you support local leaders, volunteers, right? How do you make sure that your movement gains traction, right? What kind of support do you guys provide?
We provide monthly grants to the activities, the local activities within the chapter. So the leaders, they have access to a grant in which they can do whatever kind of activities they want there, as long as it follows our our criteria, like it's from women to women, and it is also under our stances. We're not going to be promoting things that support communism, although we do support activities that are learning more about it so we can debate it better and then we can understand more. This is one way. We do have another um, kind of support that is related to our speakers bureau, in which our leaders, if they write in the regular media and they use Lola in their byline, they also get reimbursed for it. They get paid for it. And we do support our leaders in these trainings that we offer them. So because we were growing so much outside of the US in the past, our trainings were only in DC, and it was in English. And then imagine, it was very difficult to bring people from different countries. The worst area in the world to bring our Lolas to America was from Africa, because sometimes it was just so difficult to get them here, because we would give them letters, we would give them everything. We would say that they were going to be here for 5 days and then they would go back, but we wouldn't be able to. So we started doing local trainings instead. The first year that we were going to do our African retreat was in 2020, and then you know what happened, so I don't even need to tell you.
Yep.
And then ever since, we didn't get the funds for it again. So we're planning to do it next year. So hopefully we will be able to do it next year. And that's why, like, of course, I said Africa, but sometimes it's difficult to get visas, travel visas to girls from Latin America as well. So that's why we started doing one in Spanish, in the Hispanic Latin America, and one in Brazil for the sake of the language as well. So we have a training in Spanish, and then we have a training in Portuguese as well. And then we started doing in Europe. But our dream and our goal is to host a leadership training also in Asia and in Africa next year.
Fantastic. Yeah, I mean, Africa most definitely could benefit from some of ideas, right? They have their own challenges, and most definitely libertarianism should be a tool within their arsenal that could allow them to grow, and to many people escape poverty and demand better from the government, right?
Yeah. And going back to what I think you said, Victor was his name, the
Vic.
one that is
Mhm.
Vic. For instance, one time we were having a call with Joe Jorgensen for our Brazilians. And then that call was in 2021. And then it was for the Lola girls. So it was online for obvious reasons.
Mhm.
And then one of the girls asked, how do we help the people in the favelas, the ones that are so far behind, that just saying, oh, deregulating free markets, individual liberty,
Mhm.
because that person doesn't really believe that only that is going to really help these people. Because in Brazil, we see poverty very clearly. It's not like, oh my gosh, you really need to go that far to see poverty.
Mhm.
No, it's like living with us. If you go to Rio, have you ever been there?
I have not. No.
Okay, well, so most people, if somebody in the audience has been there, they know what I'm talking about. So the favelas are across the street from the most expensive luxury building. So sometimes they really believe in programs like the ones, oh my gosh, what is the name? Like basic income. So they
Yep.
really believe in this kind of programs, and somehow, which is debatable, right? Within our circles as well, some people really support those kind of programs as well. So it is a matter of debating and discussing all of them. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, most definitely within our movement, we need to address monopolies, right? Oligopolies, things like that. Um, but it is interesting that they say that, because I guess once you live in poverty for so long, it's kind of hard for you to see a way out of it, right? And you might believe that the only way is just via the government, right? The government needs to help me get out of it, right? So
or it's either the government or is getting involved with criminality.
yeah, yeah, unfortunately, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. What are some current initiatives at the national level that you believe that the New Jersey Libertarian Party members would be interested in?
For sure, are the brunch and ballots that Lana is organizing. Uh, she is organizing it, and she served as a model because now another leader of ours in Wichita is also organizing the same format of program. And last year I attended it when I was in New York, and then she organized one in New Jersey. And the girl that was with me there, also from Brazil, the other girl, one of the other girls. What That's funny because it was Lana, another member from New Jersey, two girls from Pakistan, and two girls from Brazil. And the other girl from Brazil that was there, she was the president of the Brazilian chapter, part of Lola for years. And we were both like, oh my gosh, this is the best Lola event we've ever been, because it was so nice. And then for us, it's so different. In Brazil, it's not even possible to do that kind of activity. And I think if they are interested in what we're doing locally in New Jersey, they should definitely reach out to Lana Leguía and follow our social media that is specific for the USA activities, that we are Lola USA on Instagram altogether.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that. From a perspective, then, from our side, right? You kind of spoke what we could get from you, but how can certain state parties like the New Jersey Libertarian Party collaborate with Lola in order to help increase the engagement of liberty-minded women at the local and at the state level?
For sure, what you're doing here right now helps us a lot. So I'm very grateful for this opportunity because it gives us a platform to talk about our mission and our activities. So I will always be grateful for this. So thank you very much. In different ways that we can collaborate are related to speaking opportunities, I believe. Speaking opportunities, if you guys ever have more um, and booths during your conventions. I know that Lana is in charge of it. She always gets a table at a great charge, and sometimes no charge, which is even better. And if you ever need somebody to speak about a specific topic that is of your interest, in Latin America, in Brazil, we have experts in everything that is going on there. Or if you need somebody else insight in other places, I know that right now I don't want to mention one specific one, but if elections are going on in a different country and then you want somebody from there that really understands about the local politics, and you want to hear from our own view, knowing that you're going to have a libertarian there, please count on us. And this is going to be a great opportunity to Lola given by you guys, because speaking for a libertarian, for the Libertarian Party of the USA, is considered as an honor for them.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So what would you say are the issues that are the most impactful to women right now from a libertarian perspective?
You say in the US?
In the US, yeah.
Uh, for sure, abortion, but I think it's just because abortion in the US is just like drugs, right? Abortion and drugs is the same. You can really get one if you need in the US. If people are debating it, it's just to signal. It's just to signal if they're part of one side or the other. This, I believe, is the priority in the US, but I know that Trump made abortion and immigration like the hot topics of his campaign, his last campaign. At least he's only touching one. It is only on immigration because he knows it is just impossible to make federal law against abortion in the US. That would really burn the country. And so I think that is one, because I don't really believe that putting women in jail or criminalizing not only the woman, but like the doctors or creating an environment that would bring more surveillance and instability. So I do believe that this is the most important right now when it comes from the government, right? When it is about something that the government is doing against women in general. However, when we talk about the private sector, right? Because we need to recognize that there are still going to be people that are bad. There are still going to be people there. Humans are not angels, and that's why we we want to protect ourselves. We want to have guns and everything, and that's why we need to recognize that there are people that are racist. There are people that are they're bad people. They're bad human beings. So I do believe another one, but it is easily addressed in countries like the US. It's sexual harassment in the workplace. But I do believe that the private sector does a good job here, you know. But this is another topic, not public, coming from the private sector, that I would say are my two top priority issues in the US.
That's very interesting. Myself, it got me thinking because as you pointed out, right, Trump made that his some of his top priorities, right? Close the border, deport them, abortion, right? But as you said, abortion hasn't really been touched, right, for a while, right? Um, so do you think that that's just a perspective that was created in order to motivate his base, or do you think that that's really something that's at risk for women?
I really believe it was just to motivate, because Trump has always been a pro-choice guy. If you see like all of his other comments in the past, when he was just taking care of Miss Universe, he has always been a pro-choice guy. He became a pro-life guy for the 2016 campaign, and of course he needed to sustain it because he was getting votes from the Republican Party, which is interesting because now and then after Roe v. Wade was overturned, he he came back and forth with what his opinion really was. But for sure now, I really believe he's not going to touch it. He knows this is a bad decision because uh, women women can get an abortion if they want. The only way that you are going to criminalize it is if he intensifies this surveillance against women here. Literally, you cannot know if a woman has done an abortion unless she's surveilled. And for no other reason, Melania also talking about her autobiography that I don't know if she has released or not at this point, but she was promoting it. And then she said that she was pro-choice too. So I really wonder if he starts a campaign to make it a national law, a national crime, which in my opinion would be completely unconstitutional. But he does so many things that are crazy now that if he wants,
True.
I believe he can do, you know?
Very true.
But I believe he was just signaling.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, it kind of makes sense. We do have a question from Charlie Dewell. His question was, can you repeat what you're just saying about firearms ownership?
Um,
Like your thoughts about it?
oh no, maybe I just because we spoke so much about it, but I will repeat what we said about the activities that Lana hosts is brunch and bullets. She hosts events with her chapter that are for women to learn. We have a bigger project for the future for women to learn how to use a a gun, and if they already know how to use, to have fun and to go to a range
Hmm.
and to shoot a fire gun. But I said that in Brazil it is different because we wouldn't be able to do it recreation in a recreational manner as we do it here, and that's why my Brazilian colleague and I last year, when Lana held it in New Jersey, we were so excited because it is completely different for us. It's like exotic, you know.
Mm.
And when I was in France and we were talking about guns and how Lola supports gun ownership and deregulation and the Second Amendment in general, they were kind of shocked that Americans care about it so much. You know, they think like, oh my gosh, you guys are still debating abortion issues, but you're so crazy about guns. You know, they see it as contradictorial, these two topics.
Hmm. Interesting, and it's very interesting because even in Europe, and a lot of times you have Europeans criticizing Americans, right? Oh, the old West, gunslingers. But if we actually look at Europe, a lot of countries actually have very loose laws when it comes to gun ownership. If I'm not mistaken, Switzerland has a higher percentage of gun ownership per capita than the U.S. A lot of guns are allowed there that might not actually be allowed in the U.S. Everyone is trained how to use it properly. So there is this misconception that it's just the U.S. when in reality, a lot of countries, even in Europe, that criticize the U.S. have also a lot of gun ownership. So it's interesting to kind of hear people from the outside criticize the U.S. without really look at themselves and see what they're doing, right?
Can I
Um,
just mention one
mhm,
thing that is very interesting about Brazil? When I was still in high school, we had a national referendum in Brazil, and then long story short, in Brazil, if even if you have a referendum, which is like putting things in the ballot here,
mhm.
not necessarily the government will follow the results, right? Brazilians voted to deregulate gun ownership. So
Wow.
the referendum approved, allowed, uh, pretty much Brazilians were in favor of gun ownership, but it was not implemented. So that's I need to check what was the year. I believe it was 2006, if I'm not wrong, or it was 2007. Like I was still in high school.
Mm.
So we could have had a different history, right? If that
Yeah.
had been implemented.
Yeah, and it's interesting because a lot of countries once they become a form of democracy, right? Especially after a dictatorship or military control, usually they go with gun ownership, right? Because they say, "Hey, we need to defend ourselves against this happening again," right? Um, but the fact
Yeah.
that a country like Brazil never went that route is very indicative of how much control the government still kept,
Yeah, and
right?
let me tell you another thing that is interesting about the Brazilian history that it's aligned to you as well, Bruno, is that Brazil was the only country that had an European capital outside of Europe. That was
Hmm.
Rio when the royalties left Europe because of Napoleon. But anyway, that's not the point because after the dictatorship that you said, that ended in the 1985, we had another referendum to ask if we were going to return to monarchy
Mm.
or if we were going to have, and then we would be like, have a parliamentarism style of government, or if we're going to have a republic. And then in that case, the referendum was for the republic. But that's funny because immediately after the dictatorship was over, we had a bunch of referendums to see how because they were really trying to signal that Brazil now is a democracy.
Yeah,
We're
yeah,
going to ask the population about pretty much everything.
yeah. But it didn't quite work out that way, right?
No, we didn't.
Yeah. Awesome. So, if you had one thing that you would like the members of the New Jersey Libertarian Party to hear, and it's kind of take it to heart and everything, what would that be? What would that message be from you?
I think that's a good one. I was not expecting for that one, but like um, a good message for the Libertarian Party of New Jersey. Well, I think that is it, and I believe it is just because now I have a different perspective, about how the issues that are discussed here in the US, especially when you go to the States. It's different. DC is a bubble, right? So it
Hmm.
doesn't really matter what people do there because that's not the real world. And now that I live in Maryland, I can see it too. It is like a regular state, so it's not like that bubble. But it is about not giving up or falling for everything that Trump is saying because now I think I see many people falling for what Trump is doing when it comes to immigration, for instance. And he has been very good in the propaganda and in the message that like, no, we are gonna be taking the criminals and like we are deporting the criminals or we are like saving America. And like if you go to conferences that are supposed to be liberty oriented, you really get people that believe in that. You know,
Hmm.
that's crazy. I don't know if people really change this. But the other day I was talking to the other Lola girls. If we were doing something wrong, that even within our community, and not only in the US, but in other countries as well, people really believe that immigration is the problem that causes that or that or that problem, increases problems, even with housing, you know? And so I think something to go to the heart, as you said, maybe bringing more debates and discussion in this issue specifically, because it's a lot of propaganda currently, lots of misinformation. And if I can also promote someone else and from a different organization, it would be Alex from Cato. He does immigration policy. His last name, oh my gosh, is a very difficult name. It's Eastern European, I think.
Okay.
And Nordstrom, something like that. And he does a very good job studying immigration policy. So I think that is an issue right now. It's a hot topic as well because I'm yet to see a libertarian supporting trade tariffs. So I think only immigration has been the problematic topic right now.
Yeah. Well, I guess the question becomes, and you kind of touch upon this of, what will be the difference between what Trump is doing and what Lula did, right? What will be the difference of what
Hmm.
Trump is doing and what China does, right? Because we criticize China all the time, right? Oh, China doesn't allow U.S. companies in China. Well, that's not much different of Trump saying American jobs should go for Americans, right? So the criticism of China is our enemy because we don't have access to their system is pretty much what Trump wants to implement. So there's some kind of hypocrisy there of saying they're bad for doing that, but we also want to do it, right?
Precisely, precisely. And also because if China is doing something that's bad for their citizens, well, this is not our problem. We don't need to
Yeah.
replicate because you know what is funny that happened in Brazil under Bolsonaro. Bolsonaro removed the obligation of Americans to have a visa to go to Brazil.
Mm,
So Bolsonaro removed it from Americans, Canadians, Japanese, and Australians.
mm.
And then Lula, during his campaign, he was like, I will implement it back. I want like gringos, if they come to Brazil and because they ask Brazilians to have a visa, even to be a tourist there, they really need to pay, they need to have one to come here too, which which technically they say it's reciprocity or whatever, but this is actually not good to Brazil because Americans can go anywhere. They can go anywhere, spend
Correct.
their dollars, and then for our economy, it is very important to make it easy. And like, what is the bad part of having Americans going to Brazil to spend money? We know that Americans are not gonna be, uh, well, the bad side of immigration, right? As they say, they're not gonna move to Brazil to find jobs that Brazilians don't want, because that's not really happening.
Hmm.
Americans, when they go to Brazil, is to be a tourist, and and Lula has just implemented it back.
Hmm. And it's interesting because if we look from an economic standpoint, if we look at the balance of payments, right? Part of the balance of payment is foreign investments, and tourism is part of that foreign investments. So when you restrict your tourism, you also restricting how much money is going to go into balance of payments. So now you fall within bigger and bigger deficits rather than embracing that money and now maybe have a balance of payments, or you no longer have a deficit. Maybe now you have a surplus because of those investments. And that's something that I find very interesting about Trump and his whole battle with deficits and surpluses, because if he really wants to defeat the deficit, the solution is not to bring manufacturing back to the US, because that's not our competitive advantage anymore, right? It's actually to bring foreign money to invest, and now we could balance our balance of payments. So it's interesting how, from an economic standpoint, they're doing everything that they shouldn't be doing that is actually going to contribute for bigger deficits rather than for surpluses for their countries.
Yes, totally. In for instance, in the case of Brazil, it was just a prideful move. But in the case of the US, not only that, and also bringing minds, like as you said, for the college perspective, the US has the best university system in the world currently. And then that is not only because of the native born Americans, but because we were bringing the best ones out of their countries as well to be developing systems here. In California or whatever. It depends on where you are, of course. In California, technology, and in Massachusetts, different, like for
MIT,
healthy, the health industry, like the pharma industry, all that. But of course, to be produced where? In China. Here, it's the data and the studies, and like, yes, now this is the competitive advantage of the US. For how long, we don't know anymore, right?
Correct. Yeah. You mess too much with the system is bound to break, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. Fantastic. Well, Isabella, thanks so much for your time. I do not have any other questions. Any last words you'd like to share with us?
No, I just want to say thank you again for the invite. I'm very flattered to be here. And please just follow Lola in our social media. It's like the major Instagram account is at Ladies of Liberty, but we have our American account as well. That's We Are Lola's USA, and our website, ladiesofliberty.org. And I will be happy to connect with you all.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. Truly appreciate your time, Isabella Patriota. I truly appreciate your time. My name is Bruno Pereira, and once again, this is the Growing Liberty in the Garden State. Thank you so much, everyone, and we'll see you next time.